Fenton County 911. I need 911 in my house, please. My son's overdosed with fentanyl.
I am here to tell the story about how I lost my beautiful, beautiful 31-year-old son to fentanyl. The reason I'm telling the story is because I believe it can bring hope. Bring hope to the person addicted to fentanyl, to the parents who are living through this pain, and to let those who need to know that God can be in the middle of the heartbreak. Taylor was happy. He came out smiling, and I can only hope he left smiling. But he was full of joy. He was always picking on his brothers. He was always making quirky noises. He was full of life, full of joy. Some say he was hyperactive. I choose to believe he was 100% boy. And so it was just so much fun watching him grow up as a little boy. He was 5 years old, and he was on a t-ball team. And they won it was called the Reds. They won their first championship. And I will never forget his face, full of pride, smiling from ear to ear. It was pure joy. He was just a happy, loving, sweet, full of life, full of energy boy. And growing up past that, he was about 12 or 13 when he changed. That personality changed. And I just attribute it being, growing up, being a boy. I've never been a boy. That's what I attributed it to. But he got more aggravated at things. We used to be able to poke fun at him, and he'd laugh and go about his way. But about this time, he was more serious. And he took things personally. You couldn't joke with him anymore. And he became stubborn. And I just attribute it to he's becoming who he's going to be. And that's okay. We're all different. And I didn't know it at the time, but I later learned that that's about the time he started experimenting with marijuana. Taylor in school, he got straight A's, perfect attendance. He never wanted to miss a day. In math, he was excellent, which anybody that can do math in my book is extremely smart, and he could do math. It came easy for him. Things came easy for Taylor. He played sports in middle school. He played all of them. He played year-round. He played basketball, baseball. His passion was football. He was very good at it. Quarterback, captain, leader. And if you have kids, you know that they get drug tested before they can play ball. And he got nabbed a few times, had to set out a few games because of marijuana. And while I don't condone that, I assumed it was recreational. He was trying it. It wasn't a problem at that time. And into high school, when you're the quarterback and you miss a game, everybody knows about it. This wasn't something that was kept quiet. Teachers, coaches, police, parents, everyone. He was in his junior year, I believe. I think he was a sophomore in high school when he became, the high school quarterback. Moving into the 11th grade, he had everybody thought that's the next Aikman. And his passion, his aspiration was to go to college and play football. And God willing, NFL. 11th grade, time to go to the prom. And we did the whole thing like parents do. We help them get ready. They leave in a limo. I felt an uneasiness about him going. And I don't know if it was just an overall unsettling or if it was who he was going with, perhaps. So I followed him to the prom. And I sat out in the lobby, just outside the door that they would walk into at the local hotel, or a local ballroom at the local hotel. And I watched all of his friends walk by and waved at him, thumbs up, looking good, and waited for an hour, and there was no Taylor. And so I asked, I'm like, hey, where's Taylor? Where's Taylor? Well, he's outside getting a talking to. And I'm like, what? So gathered up my stuff, my husband and I and a friend, and he's in the back of a squad car, handcuffed at this point. And apparently he had been caught with drugs as soon as he walked into the ballroom. Didn't even get to sit down. Didn't even have time to put his coat on the back of the chair before they escorted him out. He had a couple weeks left of the 11th grade to finish. They gave him his grades. But at this point, we've got to get him out of jail. We've got to figure out where we're at. And we've also got to find out, he's expelled from school. He's lost his football scholarships. And the teachers, and his coach in particular, was no help whatsoever. He called every school within a 50-mile radius and told them not to let Taylor participate in any sports. They did not want him educated. They wanted him to stay home for a year. And that just wasn't going to work for me. So we found a private school, a Christian private school, close by that actually wanted him. It was like night and day. They actually wanted my son, where his current high school wanted to throw him out. And so he did well. He did well at he got to play football, he got to play all sports. And the fact that they wanted him there was really rewarding for all of us. Now, when I said things came easy for Taylor, part of it's because people let him get away with things. So when he was in high school, it was a full-time job. It was a full-time job to get him ready for school, to get all of his folders, get his lunch money, get his soccer or his athletic gear in order. So the normal process was he would run 5 minutes late, and then I would have to drop him off and go get back whatever he forgot at home. Full-time job. And so when he went to private school, they let him sit up front when he was late. He didn't have to go into a classroom. And like I said, if you saw him, you just wanted to be around him. He was gorgeous. He was pleasing. He was fun to be around. He had a giggle that is contagious. And so I don't blame him. But he got away with a lot of things because of his personality, which, good or bad, that's the way it was. About that time, he's in school. He's been in school maybe 2 or 3 months, and he finds out he's going to be a father. And I was devastated because he was 17, and this is my baby, And I knew he wouldn't stay with me. Now, today we know she's the best thing that ever happened to all of us. She's a special child. She's beautiful. She's smart. When you look at her, you see Taylor. I've never seen a child so much fun and full of joy and smart. She's an old soul. If you ever met anybody that's an old soul, and I haven't until she came around, it's amazing. She was talking and singing when she was 2. Brilliant, beautiful. When he learned that he was going to be a father, he loved this baby before she ever got here. And I knew he wouldn't stay with me, that he would want to be with her. So he moved in with the mother of the baby and her parents. So he is moving on. He's in school. He finishes school. And he was devastated when that relationship ended. It was when I first started seeing cracks in his emotions, into his stability, when I first became concerned about his emotional stability, because it took him a very long time, and probably many years, to put that behind him. So at this time, he's moving moving towards 20, and he doesn't want to go to college, which I had a big concern about because he wanted so much out of life. He originally wanted to go to college and play football. At this point, he has no scholarship. He's away from his friends who he grew up with. He's a father now. Everything's new to him. And he's still wanting everything in the world. And so that to me was a problem. So he stumbled around, and he had this job or that job. He would work for several of our friends own their own business. He would work for them, and it's okay. He bought his car, that kind of a thing. And in his mid to late 20s, I'll say, he found his dream job. He really did. It was working for a wholesale car dealership in Dallas. He was making a ton of money. He moved into a high-rise apartment in Dallas, living the dream, or so I thought. He started out living with someone he knew from high school that was a recovering addict, which I had a huge, huge problem with. And he assured me that, Mom, it's not a problem. I'm going to be flying on an airplane 5 days a week, and I feel like I can help him. I can be an accountability partner for him. And I thought, okay. So he would fly out to all over the U.S., buy a car, go to the bank, exchange the money, and then got to drive whatever luxury vehicle that he was picking up back home. He loved it. He went, the last run that he went on, he went to Tennessee to pick up a car. Picked up the car, went into the bank with the gentleman and do the money exchange, like I said. And he came out in handcuffs. He had apparently went into the bathroom while they were at the loan desk and went in and was smoking something, heroin, fentanyl, I'm not sure what it was. And the manager got wind of it and called the police. So now we don't have a job anymore. The job's gone. The apartment's gone. The friend that he was living with, from what I understand, had relapsed and was using heroin. And at that time, to add to it, Taylor was dating he had a girlfriend, and she was addicted to heroin and fentanyl. We're in the year 2024, and he's in and out of jail. He's back. He's at home with us, and he's really struggling. Really struggling. It started out pretty slow, but it spiraled really, really fast. And in June of 2024, my husband and I were trying to help him, move on, get his feet out, get his feet underneath him, help him move on as much as we could. So that morning, we were cooking, or my husband was cooking breakfast for him. And the plan was he was going to take Taylor to get a job and find him an apartment to live in. So that morning, as he was cooking breakfast, as he was winding that up, he was hollering, "Taylor, come on. Taylor, let's get ready. Let's go." So when he finished, he walked into his room, and Taylor's missing. So he's hollering for him. I'm in my room. It's Monday morning. I'm drinking my coffee, reading a book, and I hear my husband go out the front door. And again, he's yelling, "Taylor, Taylor, where are you?" He goes out the front door, and he comes in the back. And he's not a fast walker. So there was a couple of minutes there. I'm like, what is going on? At first I thought, I don't want any part of this. There is something bad going on. I'm going to stay back here. But what I heard was my husband getting louder, and I could hear the panic in his voice. At this point, we had seen it all. We had seen the drugs, the heartbreak, the spiraling. So, of course, he's panicking. So something he never does is go into Taylor's room and turn the corner to his bathroom. But he did that this morning. And he could see that the light was on in the bathroom. So he hollered at Taylor, no response. He looks down, and he sees 4 fingers underneath the door. So he steps on him. No reaction. And at this point, I'm coming out of the bedroom. I'm hearing yelling and panic, so I'm out of the bedroom. And he goes, I can't get the door down, and Taylor's not responding. I'm like, kick it down. Get it down. And he goes, call 911. So we called 911. And about that time, he had got his arm. Taylor is 6'2" and 250 pounds, and he had his back up against the door. It was virtually impossible. I don't know how he did it, but he pushed enough and grabbed him by the hair, got him around the toilet, and wedged his way in. And at this point, I'm wanting to see him, and he has already seen him. And he's like, I'm going to let you in here. He said, but you can't scream. You got to stay calm. I've got the phone in my ear. I'm calling 911, and I'm looking at my son. And his eyes were fixed, and they were dilated. And he was blue. And his eye and his lips were turning black, and he was dying in front of me. And I ran to get the Narcan. I threw it at my husband. I gave him the phone, and I ran out. I ran out of the house. I could not watch him die. And I ran out, and I called my very best friend. And we screamed, and we prayed to God to save him, to not take him. And I walked down the driveway as I was doing this. And I waved the ambulance on. We live in rural Texas, and if you know what that's like, they can miss a house. So as I waved him on, I told my friend, Teresa, I said, you need to stay with me. I've got to walk back down the driveway, and I've got to see if he's still alive. I've got to do this. So about that time, Taylor comes out the front door. And I'm like, oh, my God, thank you. Thank you. I said, we can work with this. We can work with this. He's alive. And so God saved him with the help of Narcan and CPR that my husband performed. It was about that time I'm seeing Taylor. And he's hot-footing it. I'm like, what is going on? And he's going around the back of the house. I'm like, what's going on? Well, he had some fentanyl. What I found was fentanyl pills that he was discarding. Because at this point, we've got the ambulance, the sheriff, the whole crew in our driveway. So he knows he's in trouble. And he had a choice. He could go with the EMTs or the sheriff. So he chose the EMT, and he told him what had happened. And he said, and I didn't hear this. Again, I was chasing whatever he threw away. My husband was with him at the ambulance. The EMT asked him what he had taken. And he said 3 M60 fentanyl pills and 2 Adderall. So we're talking 40 milligrams of Adderall and with the fentanyl. And I said, what? I mean, it was beyond belief. At this point, I know what fentanyl is, right? And I said, what? And I looked at him, and he said, Miss Beltz, he said, he's an addict. This is what they do. And in that moment, I knew what I was dealing with. I thought we had a recreational drug problem. But when he told me that he's an addict, I'm like, oh, I know what an addict is. I know what this is. We are in trouble. We've got a problem, and he could die. So he's in the ambulance. He's off to the hospital. My husband and I are in the house. It's sunk in. We're on the couch. And he proceeded to tell me that after Taylor was revived, he set him on the toilet, and he said, you stay right there and don't you move. And he goes, why? What's going on? And my husband said, Taylor, you were dead. And we just brought you back to life. He goes, no, I'm not dead. I'm fine. Everything's fine. Bittersweet to learn. He had no memory of what just happened. And we all know if there's no memory, there's no consequences. There's no lesson to be learned. It didn't happen. But what did happen, when he was in the hospital, I didn't go to the hospital immediately. His brother went. His brother said, man, what are you doing? What's going on with you? And he told him that the same thing that, he would tell me. He's trying to mask some pain, trying to escape, and he wouldn't tell us what that pain was. He was prideful and arrogant. He was never going to tell us. So, but he did tell his brother, he said to his brother, he said, I know if I ever do that again, that I will die. And his brother's a preacher in his own right. And he knew a lot about near-death experiences. He said, hey, did you have a dream or anything while you were out? And he said, you know what? I did have a dream. And he said, okay, tell me about that dream. And he said there was a man at his door, the door of his bedroom, and he said it was either Dad or Jesus. I choose to believe it was Jesus. He had a cross in his hand. And he was walking over to Taylor's end table, his side table by his bed, where his Bible was. And he had a cross in his hand, and he was putting it in his Bible. And Taylor goes, what are you doing? And he looked at Taylor, and he said, you're going to find out. It had a real good job. It had promise. We covered for him. He went to work. And but at that point, he was off for a couple of days, right? And at this point, I had PTSD. And I still call it PTSD. He would sit on the couch and shut his eyes, and I would go into full panic mode. If he went to the bathroom, I would run outside and immediately get his father and say, get him out of there, get him out of there. So this was not a healthy living situation for any of us, not for Taylor and not for us. So we knew that we had to help him move, help supporting the best way we could was to put him into a local hotel, a couple of miles from the house. And our house was a couple of miles from his work. My husband would take him to work and bring him home. And we would help him stay on track as best as we could this way with him, living outside the house and us helping bringing him to work. So he worked the late shift, maybe a 5:30 to 11, something like that, the evening shift. And so one day he's at work, sitting outside waiting for Taylor to come out. And I call him, and he should have been home about 11:30, but he wasn't. And I could see his location. He was still sitting in front of Taylor's work. So I call, and I said, what's going on? And he's, well, I'm waiting for Taylor. I'm like, well, that's nothing. My husband has 2,000 minutes waiting for Taylor on this one game he plays on his phone. It's hilarious. And so I'm like, what's going on? And as I'm talking to him, I hear an ambulance in the background. And my husband stops talking. And he goes, I got to go. I got to go see what's going on. And what had happened was the ambulance had pulled into my son's work and went around to the employee entrance. So my husband goes, I know exactly what's happened. Taylor's overdosed at work. So there's a crowd in front of the bathroom. So he's moving everybody out of the way. He goes, is that my son? And they said, who are you? He goes, well, I am his father. Is that Taylor? And they said, yes. He said, is he alive? And they thought that was a strange question. But he, in the back of his mind, he told me, he goes, what am I going to tell my wife? How am I going to get her best friend down here? He was like contemplating all of this in his mind while he's, determined to find out if he's alive, and he was. He had, apparently, whoever was in the bathroom with him heard him hit the bathroom door and fall out on the floor. And they immediately called 911. And at this point, it's kind of hard to deny what happened. He's got a halfway broken nose, 2 black eyes. He'd hit the ground. And he lost a job, another job gone, of course. And so at this point, he was out on bond. And the only way that we could think to keep him safe was to tell on him, to call the probation office and tell them that he has overdosed twice, and this is a violation. I read his probation, and no way it says this is a violation. So I called them. I told on Taylor, and they said they would come and pick him up. And it took them about 5 days of us hounding them They didn't just jump right out of their chairs and come right over. We had to hound them. For 5 days, they finally came. My husband was sitting out in the parking lot because we didn't want him hurt. We just wanted them to take him somewhere so he couldn't hurt himself. So he called me from jail. He's upset, and I had to tell him, Taylor, I told them to come pick you up because you were going to hurt yourself. And he's mad at me. He's screaming. I'm crying. And I said, yes, you were, Taylor. You're going to kill yourself. And he goes, no, I'm not. I have it under control. So I guess fentanyl helps you erase your mind and remove reality. And so he was in jail from the next 3 months. So, we're still in June at this point. And we've had 2 overdoses, 2 near-death situations with him. He's in jail all of July, August, and September. So now we have some time. First of all, we can go to sleep at night and actually get some rest. And we also had time to find a rehab, try to find a reputable rehab. We talked to friends, we talked to families, and we found a facility that would take him. And they were willing to come and get him at a moment's notice. And so while he was in jail, he was all for going to rehab, just not a 12-month program. And I believe the reason, he said 2 or 3 months is fine, and I believe he agreed to it because he thought he was going to get out of jail and go to rehab, which we all know they don't have to stay there. So he is out, and he's not going to rehab. He told us he was going to go to rehab, but he found his own facility. And it was an outpatient type of rehab that actually sent his girlfriend to and paid for her sobriety. He tried it. It didn't work, but he wanted to try it again. And I knew it wasn't going to go anywhere. I knew it wasn't going to work. On his own, he was not capable. He would help everyone else, but he would not help himself. So at this point, I started grieving Taylor, and because I knew what was possible, and I knew this destructive behavior. I knew where it was leading. So he is out, and we move him to a different town. So where he was staying previously was in Hunt County. It was called the Four Corners in Greenville, Texas. They'd already shut one down, boards up and everything. But we decided we'd move you to the neighboring town, away from that mess. He had to find a job. We'd take him to go find a job. He was in walking distance in the middle of town. And he wasn't finding a job. He had some money from his job, so he was able to pay for the hotel for a couple of weeks. Wasn't finding work, so he decides to relocate. And guess where he went? Back to the Four Corners in Greenville, Texas, right in the middle of the mess, where all the drug addicts are, all bad things happen. I wouldn't go there in broad daylight to do anything without somebody with me. So he went back there, and while we didn't agree with it, he's 31 years old. He wasn't a teenager. There's not a lot that you can do with a 31-year-old who is stubborn, prideful, arrogant, knows everything, has a plan. Everything's okay. So what my husband and I decided to do from this point is just love him where he's at. Support. We weren't going to let him go without food, and so that's what we did. We just decided to tell him every single day. Well, first of all, we had a pact between his brother, myself, and my husband. I call it Operation Keep Taylor Alive. Either my husband, myself, or my son would talk to Taylor, lay our hands on Taylor, or we would text him some sort of communication that he had to respond to. We did not tell him when we were coming to visit. We would pop in unannounced, and he was fine. He was great every time we saw him. He was the old Taylor. But not at Christmas, not December 25th, when we had his daughter at our home. We waited all day for him to show up. We talked to him on the phone. He said he was on his way. He said he was down the street one time, but he never showed up. And so I texted him. There was no response. I could tell that it was delivered, but it was not read, and he certainly didn't respond to it. So I'm Operation, let's take the daughter home. Immediately went to him. And he was not high on fentanyl. I don't know what it was, but he was groggy. I went to the door, and I tried to beat the door down. I was screaming, "Open up, Taylor, open up." My husband about this time got out of the car, and he said, "Let's go sit down." He said, you need to stop it. And I said, "I'm not stopping anything until I see my son," who then proceeded to come out of the door. And when I saw him, he wasn't high. He'd been sleeping, apparently. He had obviously been on something, but it wasn't fentanyl, so I was relieved. I was relieved at this point. So we're now December 25th, 2024. And moving forward, we would have the same program. We'd pop in, never saw him high. He was great. As a matter of fact, on January the 24th, the day before he died, my husband and my stepson spent a number of hours with Taylor. He was fine. He was old Taylor. He was happy, joking. And he came home and reported the same. "Oh, we had a great conversation. He's doing fabulous. No reason for concern," is what I heard. So the next morning, again, it wasn't, I didn't feel an urgency. Normal Saturday morning, get dressed, eat your breakfast, go to Taylor. Take him to eat, find out if he needs anything. But this morning we were a little slower to get moving. Like I said, I had an appointment that morning, and my husband went with me. And I had to have my phone off for about an hour. And when we got out in the car, we were talking. I'm like, shoot, I forgot to turn my phone on. So I turned the phone on and had a bunch of calls on there. I had 3 calls and a couple of texts. And I'm like, this is pretty cruel. I mean, because I signed up for something on the internet. I don't know if you've ever done that, but I signed up and you get spam email, random phone calls. It is terrible, terrible experience. So I thought, this is a pretty cruel joke. And he said, "What?" And I said, "I've got calls from the Justice of the Peace. I've got a funeral home. And I've got the Dallas Medical Examiner's message." So I called the Justice of the Peace. And he said, "Is this Miss Beltz?" And I said, "Yes, it is." And he said, "Are you Taylor's mother?" And I said, "Yes, I am." He said, "Ma'am, I'm so sorry to have to tell you, but your son has died. He passed this morning." And I said, No, he didn't. We just talked to him. What do you mean? He's fine. And so about that time, he says, "Well, was he living at the Economy Inn in Greenville?" I went, yes, he was. "Well, your name was listed as the next of kin on his driver's license." And when he said that I was listed as the next of kin on his driver's license, I knew that he was telling me the truth, because before he got out of jail in October, I wanted him to have his driver's license, and he had lost it. So I put myself as the next of kin. And so the next thing I want to do is jump out of the car into oncoming traffic. And about that time, my husband locks the door. And I looked, and still not really processing what's going on, but I knew the guy had some truth in him, because he's saying things that are making sense. He's telling me facts that are correct. About that time, my husband is locking the door, and I look immediately at him, and he is wet from eyes to chin, just pouring tears. He knew that we finally got that phone call that we had been dreading this whole entire time. And at that moment, I knew what had happened. I knew that he was dead. So since we couldn't see him at the medical examiner's office, I thought, well, let's go to the hotel. We need to get his stuff. And I called his brother. I told him that the horrific news that his brother had passed. So we met each other, and we both arrived at the same time at the hotel. And it just didn't seem real. It just did not seem real. But yet it was. Walked in, and the person that was there with him when he died, she proceeded to tell me that he was trying to get off a Percocet. And I'm like, stop. Because I didn't want her to say one more. I was afraid she was going to give me an excuse, number one, and I didn't want whatever she was going to say to be rolling around in my head. And I just hugged her. I said, I'm so sorry that you had to go through this. We gathered up his stuff. We took it back home. And from that point on, it was like 2% brain power. I mean, it was just inconceivable. It was unimaginable. The pain, the physical, the mental, the couldn't sleep for days. I mean, it was just an unbearable pain. Taylor was gone. I wasn't ready to lose him at 17. I wasn't ready to lose him at 31. The truth of it is he made a lot of bad decisions in his life, obviously. But he made one good one on May the 17th, 2019, when he gave his life to the Lord. And that is the only thing that gets me through this, is knowing that I will see him someday. And the truth of the matter is, he wasn't mine anyway. He always belonged to the Lord. And I'm so grateful that he gave me 31 years with my baby. I loved him fiercely. I would have died for him. I would have gladly. I told him when he was in his casket for a private viewing, and he looked terrific. I mean, he looked alive in that casket. I thought I saw his chest move up and down, but I told him, I said, I would have died for you, Taylor, if you would have just let me. After this, there were some things that they had given me at the funeral home, his belongings, what he had on him. And the police had taken his phones, which apparently that's a gem. They found a phone. Oh, that's the best thing in the world. They can get in there and find out who they were talking to and figure out who he bought the drugs from. Well, the phones were smashed. They wouldn't even charge. You couldn't see them. The screens were crashed. So I'm assuming somebody destroyed them as best as they could before the police got there. And so they gave me the belongings and his necklaces. There was a necklace that was gone. And I'm like, was there not the black necklace, which I'm wearing today? Where is that at? And they said, well, this is all he had. So they gave me that stuff. So I asked the girl that was in the room with him when he died where that necklace was. And she said, well, he gave it to someone. And this necklace was important to me because while he was in jail, I would wear the necklace for him, and I would give it back to him when he got out. And so it meant a lot to me. So she said, under the circumstances, I know where it's at, and they'll probably give it back to you. And they did. With that, and I asked, she said what she told me was he had given it to someone who was struggling with their faith. So he gave them a cross. I later learned that there was a family that came to the funeral that I didn't recognize. So they came up and hugged me, and they said, you don't know us, but Taylor meant a lot to us. He helped us when we were struggling. He gave us a place to stay. He gave us what food he had. He helped us with our faith. And so I'm like, who is this? Who is this? And he would help other people. He wouldn't take help. He didn't need any help, but he would help everybody else. His brother came to see him. It was a couple of days before he died, and he was struggling. He had a personal issue which he was struggling with. My son was quoting scripture to his brother, who is a preacher in his own right, and he was going, wow, this is fabulous. Wow, he has really come a long way. He's doing great. And I continue to get text about Taylor. Taylor is the reason why I'm sober today. That's the reason why I'm in NA or AA. It's because of him. Whatever you need to keep his name alive and continue to save lives, I'll help you. Everybody that knew him, there was standing room only. And it was just, I felt so blessed that everyone that loved him came to that funeral. And, my second, my thoughts were after it subsided, and part of it was operating on 2% brain power. I had to have a lot of help. My best friend, who planned the funeral with my guidance, all of my friends came and served us at our home. My work, who gave me what I needed. Everybody involved. Without those folks and my faith, there's no way I could get through this. And one of the things I did want to know is, and I've called the detectives in Hunt County. I'm like, can we find out who killed my son? Have you found out who killed him? Because let's be honest, somebody has killed my son. They sold him fentanyl. And I said, and so the person in the room with him when he died knows exactly who sold the drugs. But she won't tell. What I want from her is to tell who killed my son. She says she loves him. If that's love, I don't want any part of it. I do not want any part of that kind of love. What I want is for somebody to start telling. This don't ask, don't tell thing is not working. These people are dying. And I want to know who sold my son fentanyl.